Hello and welcome back for another standard video. Today we're going to be taking a look at this Rakdos monument deck. The deck is trying to utilize discard in order to grow our small creatures, and at the same time we're trying to discard cards that gain additional value from the graveyard to try and create card advantage over our opponent. At 1 mana, we have 4 copies of Moonshadow. This 7/7 menace creature enters with 6 -1/-1 counters, and then whenever one or more permanent cards are put into our graveyard, we get to remove a counter from it. So it can grow quite quickly depending on the frequency of the discard or if our opponent uses removal on one of our other permanents. Similar effect, Marauding Mako is a 1 mana 1/1, and then whenever we discard a card, we get to put that many counters on the Mako. So we can play it out early in the game and then have it scale as we discard things. And it also has cycling too. Then the last discard payoff is Monument to Endurance, 3 mana artifact. Whenever we discard a card, we get to choose an effect that hasn't been chosen this turn, and that's between drawing a card, creating a treasure token, or draining our opponent for 3 life. So it's quite possible that if our opponent has stalled out the board state in the mid to late game, that we can just use this to get the last few points of damage in. When it comes to our discard enablers, we have 4 copies of Bloodthorn Flail, a 1 mana artifact equipment that gives the equipped creature +2/+0, and then the equip cost is either 3 or discard a card. Notably, this effect can be triggered multiple times in a single turn, so if needed, we can discard a handful of cards and grow our creature significantly. There's also 4 copies of Iron Shield Elf, a 2 mana 3/1 that lets us discard a card to give it indestructible, and we have to tap it down. Similar to the Flail, this can be activated multiple times in a single turn. And the last enabler is Inti, Seneschal of the Sun. This is a 2 mana 2/2 and states whenever we attack, we can discard a card, and if we do, we get to put a +1 counter on target attacking creature, giving it trample until end of turn. Very useful on cards like the Marauding Mako that don't have any form of built-in evasion to allow it to trample over small chump blockers. Additionally, Inti states that whenever we discard 1 or more cards, we get to exile the top card of our library, and we can play that card this turn, so we can recoup some additional value from the cards discarded by trying to replace them. The next set of cards are cards that we're looking to discard. 4 copies of Bloodghast, 2 mana 2/1 that can't block, and it has haste as long as our opponent has less than 10 life. It also has a landfall ability that lets us return it from our graveyard to the battlefield, which is why we don't mind discarding it. Timeline Color, a 2 mana 2/2 with haste, and it states that we can cast it from our graveyard using its warp ability, again gaining additional value once it's been discarded, and the warp cost is a black mana and 2 life. So it's not entirely free, but if we have a nice aggressive start, we may not mind paying the life to bring it back. And the last one is Flamewake Phoenix, a 3 mana 2/2 with flying and haste, and it has to attack each combat if able. The Phoenix has Ferocious, meaning at the beginning of combat, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we can pay a red mana and return this card from the graveyard to the battlefield. Can easily be enabled with the Moonshadow or the Mako in the mid-game, and then additionally, the Bloodthorn Flail attached to any of our other creatures should be able to trigger this ability. For removal, we're running 2 copies of Requiting Hex. For 1 mana, this instant lets us destroy target creature with mana value 2 or less. Additionally, we can put a -1/-1 counter on one of our creatures and gain 2 life, which could be useful if we've drained ourselves a bunch with the Timeline Color. And then we have 2 copies of Bitter Triumph, a 2 mana instant that has an additional casting cost of discarding a card or paying 3 life, and it lets us destroy target creature or planeswalker, so some more discard synergy. Then the last creature card in the deck is Desecrex's Gift of Servitude. This is a 4 mana 4/3 with trample, and it also has Mayhem, meaning if we discard it, we can cast it for a black and a red. When it enters, we get to return a creature card with mana value 3 or less from our graveyard to the battlefield. So this can target every other creature in our deck. That creature gains that it must attack each turn if able, And whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, we have to sacrifice it. Based on this, I think one of the prime targets is actually going to be the Iron Shield Elf, since if needed, we can tap it down before combat, meaning it will never be able to attack in, and we can keep it around as a discard enabler. For the mana base, we have 6 Swamp and 3 Mountain. A little bit heavier on the swamps, since we do have some double black pip creatures that we can potentially be casting. Then we have the full play set of Blazemire Verge and Blood Crypt as dual lands. 1 copy of Restless Vents. This land enters tapped, but for 3 mana, we can turn it into a 2/3 with Menace. And then when it attacks, we have the option to discard a card and draw a card, synergizing with our deck strategy. And then lastly, there's 4 copies of Starting Town, again for mana fixing, and we can also add a generic mana to cast some of our 2-drops as well and not take the life loss. We're looking to come out of the gates quickly and then overwhelm our opponents using the value from the monument and all of our recurring graveyard threats. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. This hand is pretty good. We'll keep. I think we start on the Moonshadow here. Better at attacking past our opponent's trump blockers in the early game. Alright, we play out the Starting Town. Well, yep, I say we'll play the Starting Town here. Get the Mako out. The Flail can attach by discarding a card to the Mako, and then we'll move it over to the Moonshadow. Hit for 5. Pass the turn. Corpse of the Lost. So opponent's going to be playing a Viper. Got a couple options here. Shock in. Discard the monument. Then we'll bring the Phoenix back when we attack. Opponent down to 1. And they die from their Obsessive Pursuit. Good game. This hand is okay. We'll keep. Up against the green deck. We'll start on the Moonshadow. See if they have a Badgermole Cub on 2. They don't, just a Bristly Built. So let's see here. We can bring back one of our Phoenixes. We'll play out the Flail. Discard. And then we might as well discard the other Phoenix. Hit for 7. They have a Hydra here. And they just concede. Likely have to chump block with the Hydra, and that would ruin their whole game plan. On to the next. This hand doesn't look very good. We don't have any way to discard cards. This is better. We'll keep. And then I think based on what we have here, we'll put back one of the mountains. Up against a green deck, and our opponent has a nice aggressive start here. We'll play out the Moonshadow, see if we can dodge a turn 2 Badgermole Cub. Bailoff is fine. And it attacks in. We'll take it. Then this turn, I think we play out one of the Moonshadows. One seems to be holding up some priority here. Discard a Shield Elf. Equip the Flail. Right, no fight spell or anything there, so we'll attack in for 4. Pass the turn. Love to draw another card that we don't mind discarding next turn. That way we can grow all the Moonshadow some more. Opponent on 4 mana here. They play out an Ooze, which for the most part is fine. It does impact our Phoenix and Bloodghast if we find one. They also need to have mana up though to use that. And we have the Hex that we can use at instant speed. So I think we play out one of the Moonshadows. We can discard Monument. Grow our shadows. And Hex can be used at instant speed. So we'll use this to blow out a double block. Or attempt to. Our opponent did have interaction they were holding up, so it could be a protection spell as well, I suppose. Opponent is also probably wondering if Blood Flail can be activated at instant speed. Opponent is deep in the tank thinking about something, and they might have changed their mind here. So we want to take out the Ooze, since that can grow up to a 4/4 by itself. And they do have the protection spell here. So we'll trade with their Bailoff. Opponent takes 3 down to 13. And this will grow our Moonshadows. Three Moonshadows is particularly tough for our opponent because they're going to have trouble finding the bodies to chump block all of them. Does this gain life every time they eat something? They do gain 1 life here, so that also helps our opponent stay alive. Honestly, if I were them, I would probably just eat everything out of the graveyard and start pushing damage. I think they're going to be winning the race. Let's see if they've come to the same conclusion. Right now we're both on a 3-turn clock, and our opponent has the first attack. They could turn it into a 2-turn clock if they eat their Bailoff, but they don't. Based on that, I think we just equip normally. And we're not big enough to tango with the Ooze, so we'll hold back. Terribly slow play from our opponent. We're empty-handed, so it's not like we have anything they need to play around. They plot an Alchemist, so they're going to start pushing damage now. We could trade both Moonshadow, or try, well, we couldn't because they just eat something, so down to 7. What does this say? Just when it becomes plotted. So I think we need to hold back a chump blocker here. I'll attack in with one of the Moonshadow. And then we'll play the land tapped. Opponent's going to eat some cards out of their graveyard. Do they have another plot creature? Do they have another Alchemist? Taking them a long time if they do. Here we're forced to chump block. What does this cost to activate? 3. So in theory, we can chump next turn as well. Opponent plays out the Alchemist, so now they have some chump blockers. We'll try and swing in. It looks like they might have another indestructible spell, Strength of Will. So that was about as bad as it could go. Our opponent has it here. They were able to outscale our creatures, and that was enough to wall us on the ground until they were able to get past with some combat tricks and trample damage. Good game. This hand is extremely fair, not the explosive starts that we're necessarily looking for. We're still looking to get a Monument to Endurance in play, so I'll keep it, give it a try. Start on a Blood Crypt tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent also starts on a tapped land. So play out Inti. Hope it survives. And they have a Town Greater. So they're going to be Reanimator here. And while we can typically fill our graveyard, I think what they're reanimating is going to be better. So here we have the option to play out the Monument first, or to attack with Inti. I think we have to attack. There's too many good 1-drops we can hit that we want to be able to cast. Land is good too. They trade already. Likely have a Cavero in hand. Bitter Triumph takes out our Inti, so that's going to slow us down. We can play out a Mako and another Inti, as well as a Verge. Pass the turn. Human again points towards Cavero. They don't play it yet, so they're probably waiting for their board wipe. They can discard it here if they have it in hand. Not yet. And I think we don't need our other land here. So we'll attack in with everyone. Discard the swamp. I think we want to draw a card. And we'll put a counter on the Mako. And then drawing another land here, we'll discard the vents. Drain our opponent. And we do find another Mako, so that's good. Might as well play it out. If our opponent has the board wipe, they have the board wipe. It doesn't do us any good in exile. Wistfulness not going to save them here. We'll play out Timeline Color. Attack with everything. Discard the Moonshadow. And then here we'll just spread the love around. I think we'll put it on the color. And that should be game. Lucky our opponent's deck didn't quite get the right cards into the right zones in that one. On to the next. This hand is missing a discard outlet, but it's got the Moonshadow and a Mako in it, so we'll give it a keep. And here I think we'll actually start on the Restless Vents, try and double spell next turn. Looks like we could be up against the same Reanimator deck. Just discard a Breeding Pool. So we'll play out double Moonshadow here. Still no way to discard. I guess we could cycle the Mako. This will grow the Moonshadow that's in play. Could also hardcast a Phoenix, start pushing damage. I like that over the Endurance. There is a Last Gift, so if our opponent has a Kavero and a land in hand, they're just going to win. There's the land. Do they have the Kavero? Notably, they can also return it next turn using Awakened Honor Dead's last step here, and then they'll be able to board wipe us. So we really need another discard outlet. They return the Moonshadow. Get another creature into their graveyard. And then Overlord will really stock them up. So without any graveyard hate in our deck, we don't stand a chance here. You can see the difference between when our opponent's deck is popping off and when it isn't. We'll just play out a Monument, tap Starting Town, and hit for 2. Here they'll discard another creature, most likely. Yep, Wistfulness. Get the Kavero back, wipe our board, and bring back, I don't know, 4 or 5 big creatures in the process. They actually went for a land. Again, doesn't mean they don't have Kavero in hand already. And there it is. That was a mistake. I guess they are just trying to get it out of our graveyard. So let's see, if we play out double Moonshadow here, and then cycle the Mako, and then we'll drain our opponent, and they just concede here. So looks like our opponent punted this one. If they had used Kavero to reanimate, they would have just steamrolled us. On to the next. This hand is okay. We'll keep. Opponent starts on a swamp. Tactics will take our Mako here. Could take the Shield Elf too, depending on what their answers are. They actually take the Elf. So I think we be patient. I'm not going to run our Mako out into face-up removal. We'll let them waste it on the Inties. Soul Search, so our opponent does have quite a bit of discard here. Play out the Inti, and we won't attach the Blood Flail yet. Maze Mind Tome for card advantage. Opponent passes the turn here. And we draw into a Timeline color, which is one we don't mind discarding. Draw into our land for turn. Let's see. We can work the color from the graveyard. Then we will attach our other flail to the color. Grab a Hex. Not that we need to use it, but let's attack in first. We'll discard the empty. put the counter on the color. And then here we can use the hex on the token. Keep it from chump blocking the inti. And the opponent's going to take 9 here, down to 11. Verge. Strategic Betrayal. Bitter Triumph, we don't mind discarding to attach the Blood Flail. Again, we don't expect our opponent to have a ton of creatures in their deck. And Death in the Family, perfect answer for the color. So we're in quite a bad position now. They're going to get to draw a couple cards with Tome, and we don't have any pressure on them. Authority is going to stop all of our haste creatures. Although the Restless Vents, if they don't have instant speed removal, might be able to get in for a few points of damage here. We'll activate it. Try and attach one of the flails. And if they have removal here, I think that's pretty much game over. We're going to have no way to get in here. Another Maze Mind Tome. So again, our opponent likely doesn't have any actual win conditions in their deck, or just 1 or 2, and they're just playing to be annoying. This hand is just okay. It needs a discard outlet. Frog deck from our opponent. Don't see many of these. We'll start on the Moonshadow. Bloodghast is a good card to discard to the Shield Elf. Opponent hits for 2. Blood Flail, also a good card. So we have some options here. I think I'll just play out the Shield Elf, and then we can hit for 1. Opponent shocks in. Play out the Might Caller. And they have a fight spell. We can save it here. Take 3. Mako is another good top deck. We'll play out the Flail. And then we have to discard a card to equip it. Attack in for 7. Pass the turn. Opponent shocks in again, down to 8. We have the Hasty Time Color right now that we can warp in as well. Our opponent's going to take at least 7 from the attack. They play out a Changeling that can absorb some more damage. But they just concede here. Good game. This hand is pretty good. We're on the draw, so we do have to slow down a bit. And our opponent has Llanowar Elves, so probably the best start that they could hope for. I think we'll play out the Restless Vents, and then on turn 2 we can play out the Moonshadow and the Mako. Leyline Weaver, so good amount of ramp from our opponent. do the play that we just described. Next turn we do have a couple different options for discarding. Opponent has 5 mana here. They're going to Seam Rip the Moonshadow. Do they have a second removal spell? Play a Riddler, draw a card. Play out another Weaver and hit for 2. Next turn they'll be able to hardcast the Riddler. What are our best options here? Probably just playing out the Inti, attacking with the Mako, and we'll discard the Phoenix. Draw into a mountain, which we'll play out and pass. Opponent shocks in. Gear Hulk likely going to grab at least one more Seam Rip, if not 2. Although they did tap out of white mana here. There's a Seam Rip and a Resolve, meaning they're going to be able to fight the Mako and take it out. They opt to play the Riddler instead. Untaps the Weavers so they can still fight here. And I think this one is beyond lost at this point. Play out the Monument, tap starting town, pass the turn. They're going to Seam Rip the Inti and hit us for most of our life. Nature's Rhythm for 4, untaps the Weavers, or Volroid. This might even be lethal here. 16, so 1 short. And we just draw into a Swamp, which is not going to do it. We can discard a Swamp here. Just draw a card, see what we would have gotten. Desecric's not the worst. Not going to help us though. The Gear Hulk has Trample. Quantum Riddler can fly over in the air, and their board is also much wider. Badger Mole Cub. And another Riddler. This will draw 3 cards. And our opponent should just attack in here. They're just wasting our time, so we're going to concede and move on to the next. This hand has potential. That's all I can say about it. It's not amazing without one of our 1-drops. And we'll just get the Flail into play. Black-white from our opponent here. And since they're just holding up removal, we'll play out a Bloodcast. If they want to take it out using their removal spells, that's fine with us. Corpse of the Lost. Opponent hits for 3. They change their mind. Oh, they attack in. So here we'll play out the Monument. We can discard a Bloodcast to equip the Flail. And then here we're going to draw a card. We're pretty good on mana at the moment. So we'll hit for 4 and pass the turn. Probably the worst card we could see here is another copy of Corpse of the Lost. Sheltered by Ghost, also not the best. Going to make it difficult to race. So let's see, what can we play out here? Can do a Monument and a Mako. It's probably good enough. We don't have a discard outlet at the moment. Need to get our Mako scaling if we're going to be racing the skeleton. Looks like opponent might have some form of removal in their hand, and they're contemplating whether or not to use it. I think Bloodthorn is the weaker of the two. They'll hit for 4. We'll play out the Shield Elf, and we'll swing back for 4. Discard the starting town here. Draw a card. Discard the land. Drain our opponent. And discard the timeline color. Create a treasure. No attack from our opponent. Unfortunately, we don't draw into anything phenomenal here. We can move the Flail over. We'll draw a card. And then another color is a good pickup. So swing with everything. See if they want to trade their token. Guess they have to. If we have exactly 13 swinging in here. And that gives us our monument back. Colors warp out. And I think we're in a pretty good spot here. Another Corpse of the Lost. They're 1 mana short. So we'll equip the Flail over to the Bloodthorn, draw a card, and draw a card, and our opponent concedes here. They weren't necessarily dead yet. We only had 10 damage face up. Good game. Alright, so there you have the deck. To me, it felt like it functioned more as an aggressive deck than a mid-range deck. The games where we had multiple Moonshadow and Marauding Mako early in the game, we were able to put significant pressure on our opponents, and even through some interaction, we were still able to win the game. Bloodthorn, Flail, and Iron Shield Elf felt fantastic, being able to discard multiple cards in a turn, and the reiteration of the Bloodthorn, Timeline Color, and the Phoenix also felt good. Inti was also pretty strong. The fact that it has the opportunity to replace the cards that you discard allow you to continue to gain advantage. Honestly, the weakest card in the deck kind of felt like the Monument to Endurance. Usually it's a turn 4 when you're really able to start gaining some advantage from it, and I feel like this deck wants to try and win faster than that. You could see in the last game there, though, that when we did have the Monument popping off, it was extremely powerful, as it synergizes very well with what we're trying to do here. Desecrix also didn't feel tremendously strong and could probably be cut from the deck and replaced with a more aggressive creature. It's possible that you want to remove the Requiting Hex and replace them with more Bitter Triumph. That way you have additional discard outlets if you don't have your Flail or Shield Elf in hand, as in a couple of the games we did feel a little bit light on how to actually discard cards. Overall, I was happy with how the deck performed, and I think it provides a nice aggressive threat to the format. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.